For Inside Carolina, I'm Taylor Vippolis, and this is Up in the Rafters, where I'm joined by Carolina basketball legend and 2017 national champion, Justin Jackson. Justin, I know you're doing well. You're out there in Boston. The Celtics are in first place in the Eastern Conference. You have your family out there with you from Thanksgiving, and now you're on a long homestand. But it's been a rough past week for the UNC basketball team with back-to-back losses, first on Friday against Iowa State and then Sunday in four overtimes against Alabama. What have kind of been your takeaways watching this team from the Phil Knight Invitational?
Um, I've been telling everybody kind of around here that we definitely have probably the most talent when it comes to college basketball. But we're not necessarily the best team right now. And that goes for how hard they play, how much they play together throughout the game, and how much they pay attention to all the little details. I think after watching these past few games and kind of seeing how certain teams how they start off playing and they can play that same way the whole game with no kind of adjustments when it comes to the players. Um, I think that for me is kind of the most concerning part. But I'm gonna keep saying it. It's still somewhat early. We haven't even hit ACC play, but I think there's definitely a few things they got to kind of tweak a little bit.
On the Celtics, take us inside that locker room. I know JD Davison is an Alabama guy. Were there any bets made in the locker room? And you also have Noah Vonleh, who North Carolina is going to see Indiana. What's the trash talk kind of been like in the Celtics locker room?
Yeah, man. Thankfully, JD wasn't up with us yesterday. He was in Maine, but it's an automatic bet whenever your team plays another guy's team. So I'm gonna have to add his Apple Pay, Venmo, something, um, and get that money to him. And then I didn't even think about Noah being with Indiana, so I'm gonna have to talk to him tonight. I gotta up the ante. I gotta ride with my guys. After back to back losses, I gotta ride with them. So we'll see what the outcome of that one is. But it's always fun to go back and forth and have those kind of bets and that stuff on the line in the NBA locker room.
I love the double down where, a lot of people might be getting off the Carolina bandwagon. They lose two games. You're
I can't.
reinvesting.
I can't. I gotta ride with them. I know there are a lot of people that rode with us whenever we had a few bad games, so I gotta ride with them.
And today the new AP rankings came out. Carolina goes from 1 to 18. You normally don't see that type of fall in the rankings. As a team that is coming off an appearance in the national championship game, how do you think they're feeling coming off the holiday weekend and kind of getting humbled out there in Portland?
Yeah, I mean I think humbling is the perfect word to use. You all off season, and even going, through this first part of the season, it's been how good they are, and how they've returned basically everybody back and brought in another guy that could really help them, and all of these things they can do, like how great they are. And then you kind of get hit in the mouth the first game against Iowa State, with a team that obviously everybody knew was pretty good, but they weren't favorited or anything like that. So you get hit in the mouth with that one, and then you hope that you can kind of bounce back and kind of get the momentum back, and then you get, in what was an unbelievable game. But you get knocked down again. So I think it's a matter of them. It's a quick turnaround. They play again on Wednesday, obviously, and for me, it was the loudest gym I've ever played in. And so you got to just get back to yourself. You got to, get back to the details of what got you to where you are, what got you to the national championship last year, and what's gotten you to some of the success early on, and try to focus on yourself.
Yeah, that Alabama game was wild. It was very little offense was being played, or very little set offenses were being played. My thought watching that game, I was like, soccer might have a point having ties, where it was like, I'm watching that game. We're going to two overtimes. We're going to three overtimes. Carolina is inbounding the ball with 3 seconds. They turn it over. Alabama gets the ball. Alabama turns it over. Carolina gets one shot. And I'm like, You know what? I don't think either team really deserves to win this game. Unfortunately for North Carolina, Alabama made just essentially one more play than them to win the game. That's what Hubert Davis said in his post game. The most worrying thing for this North Carolina team right now, I think on the defensive end, has to be their 3-point defense. Teams are shooting 35.6% against them. That's 262nd in the NCAA, and then 309th in 3-point attempts per game with 25.2. So not only teams are making threes against them, they're also shooting it at a very high volume. What do you think's happening on that side of the ball for the Tar Heels, and how can they kind of fix those issues?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not totally sure what their schemes are defensively. I know I've seen a few times guys have helped off like the strong side corner, which is we did it whenever we were back in North Carolina, but in the NBA, that's like the biggest no of defense is never help off the strong side corner. So you've seen that a couple times. You've seen, um, guys just kind of lose track of shooters. In Iowa State, obviously, it was shown with I think his last name was Grill.
Yeah.
He was kind of getting loose. He had some tough and contested ones as well, but he was kind of getting loose just randomly. So like I said, I'm not sure what Coach Davis and the coaching staff have them doing as far as the help defense and how to play against shooters and that kind of thing. But I think it's just an awareness at all times of okay, if my guys hit 3 or 4 shots, I might not be able to help as much. Like I got to start creeping out a little bit more. I have to always be aware of where he is on the floor. So I think a part of it is obviously, whatever they say to do on defense, that's what they're supposed to do. But I think the players on the court also have to be smart and knowing, okay, this guy's kind of got it going, or this guy's shown that he's willing to let it go from wherever. So I got to get out there, a little bit earlier than I usually do.
Yeah, you mentioned Caleb Grill from Iowa State, and it's the perfect microcosm for the Carolina basketball when it comes to defense. He goes for 31 points against UNC. He's 11 of 15 from the field, 7 for 11 from three. The next game against UConn, he's 0 for 5 from the field, 0 for 3 from three, 1 point. So it's like whatever the North Carolina defense is doing, other teams aren't really having those same issues. And when you highlight the 3-point, how much of a issue it's been for Carolina to defend the 3-point line, I think the Caleb Grill story right there is the perfect example of that. And I think North Carolina's defense, they are playing well for 24 seconds, but you play well for 24 seconds, that still leaves 6 seconds for a team to get off a great look. If you're Carolina and you are playing well for 24, 25 seconds, is there anything you could do to kind of work on like finishing out possessions?
Yeah, I mean, it's just once again, it's staying aware the whole possession. Like for instance, when they play Virginia, Virginia uses the entire shot clock, right? So it's like you can't ever relax, or you can't say, okay, I've played 25 good seconds of defense. Like, let me just chill. You have to just always stay aware. And I think that's kind of, even I think a few times they still out rebounded them, but I think a few times Iowa State even got some second and third chances, by hitting the offensive glass, especially down the stretch. And I think that obviously is demoralizing for a defense who might play good defense for 28 seconds in the shot clock and then they give up an offensive rebound. But I think it's just a matter of, you know, I think we've seen them compete and play really hard for the most part. Um, but I think if they're able to play hard and compete the whole entire game, obviously there's lulls, there's ups and downs, things are going to happen within a game. But if you can rely on, okay, I know every single time we go on the court, we're going to play hard, then your talent is just going to take over. And I think we've seen a few times where they're locked in defensively, like they're pressuring the basketball, they're switching up, they're, communicating and rotating whenever they need to rotate. And then there's other times where you just kind of see guys just kind of relax. And you see, obviously, a guy like Grill gets hot and gets some confidence. And it's kind of hard to stop that. So I think they just have to compete and be aware at all times.
Carolina's leading scorer in the Alabama game, Caleb Love, a career high 34 points. I don't think that tells the entire story because this stat that I'm about to read, his 36 field goal attempts are the fourth most in a game by a Tar Heel, the most since Billy Cunningham in 1964. Four overtimes doesn't help that overall number, but still when 40% of your shots are coming from somebody who's already not that efficient already, it's never going to be a recipe for success. You add in RJ Davis and the backcourt shot at 60 times, so 66% of UNC shots on Sunday came from two players that shot it at a 35% clip from the field. Thinking of some of the teams that you were on, and nobody is coming close to that type of volume. For the people that love this program, it almost makes the Carolina basketball offense look like unrecognizable. Like we've really never seen something like this before. What's your take on the offense, and why is it so, so heavy on just one or two players getting all the looks?
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing is their offense is totally unrecognizable to what it was when Coach Williams was here. That's just how it is now. Coach Davis has changed up some of the plays. He's got a few more like NBA sets, high pick and rolls, that kind of stuff in it that you never saw with Coach Williams's offense. So that's one thing that I think people are just gonna have to get used to seeing is a little more ball dominant from the point guards and coming off pick and rolls and that kind of thing. But I think too, we've talked about it even going into the season. Caleb Love, RJ, and Mondo, those were the main guys that we knew were going to have to be aggressive and have to be, pulling all the weight basically on offense. Obviously you see a game like, the Portland game where Pete Nance has 28. He looks like he's super confident shooting the ball well. And then, whether it was teams started making adjustments or they just didn't get him as involved. And we know Leaky will give you, 10 to 12, just kind of, randomly throughout the game. But I think it's tough in a game like that where obviously you add 20 extra minutes. That's a whole nother half. And I think what's crazy to me is Caleb Love only shot 11 threes. So 25 of those shots were, whether they were mid-range pull-ups, he was shooting a bunch of floaters, which I'm the number one advocate when it comes to floaters. Trust me, I'm on the bandwagon. But I think a lot of times, especially in a game like that, you have to try to get the best shot possible because you're going to have to come back on the other end and play 25 more seconds of defense. And so, it is 36 shots is a lot of shots. RJ shot 24. I think the one for me that's a little more worrisome is the fact that Mondo only shot 12. Like obviously they were doubling a lot on the block and things like that. But the fact that your, pillar basically down there only gets 12 shots in a 60-minute game, I think that's kind of more worrying than the, 60 combined shots between the two guards.
Yeah, I was gonna say Mondo was in foul trouble for parts of the game, and then he was also battling some ankle injuries to kind of justify why he only had 12 shots. But I mean, he still played 39 minutes.
He still played almost 40. So you would think you would get him a little more. I mean, he still finished with 20 and 10. So it's not like he didn't do anything. But, to see 36 shot attempts and 24 shot attempts, and then he only has 12, I think that's where I think there was a little discrepancy that should have been fixed a little bit.
Yeah, and I think part of the frustration from the fan base is the shot selection you mentioned, where the guards really aren't attacking the rim. They're taking these contested jumpers at the free throw line or the floater. Like most UNC fans, I'm glad you mentioned this. Most UNC fans would sign up for 20 floaters a game if they're coming from you. But that really hasn't been a strength of Caleb Love's game. So what do you think the best way or the best middle ground for Carolina to win games, but also maximize Caleb and RJ's potential in this offense?
Yeah, it's tough because Caleb has shown that he can hit those, especially when he kind of gets it going. You kind of saw him. I mean, he hit a decent amount during this little tournament of 1-2 dribble floaters or coming off the pick and roll floater. But I think with him, it's honestly, it's just kind of mixing it up. And whether it is, okay, maybe sometimes he just takes all the way to the hole, tries to get fouled, or tries to finish at the rim. We've seen his athleticism and his ability to finish at the rim. Or it's just a matter of letting plays develop a little bit more. We've seen him kind of shoot some floaters like from the free throw line um, or a little further out. And it's, I feel like coming off the ball screens or even off of a closeout, a lot of times when you let things develop, there's a better shot that ends up, opening up. So I think that's all it really is. Obviously, RJ, he's a little shorter, so a lot of his is going to be pull ups or, you know, trying to mess with the defensive rhythm and getting floaters up quickly or whatever it might be. It might not be a ton of finishes at the rim, but I think it's just a matter of letting things develop a little bit more and waiting to see. And then if it is the floater is the best option for the shot, then shoot the floater every single time. But it's just letting things kind of develop and let things, lay out how they're supposed to lay out and then make the best read off of that.
Yeah, and I don't think it was all like doom and gloom from the Portland trip. You mentioned that Portland game. You saw Pete Nance, his offensive potential. You lost 2 games, but it's two probably NCAA tournament teams that it's going to help. They lost these games now, but they're going to be more battle tested come tournament time when you play these higher caliber teams like Iowa State and like Alabama. I wrote down a few of the positives that I've seen. One, it's not a lack of effort. This team is out there. They're playing hard. You got a few tough plays from Puff Johnson. I thought it was nice to see him where he probably had his best game since that national championship game against Kansas, where he's diving on the floor. Seth Trimble, he had big plays to force a deflection out of bounds. And then from that Alabama game, I thought Pete Nance showed his ability to guard on the perimeter. I thought his play was outstanding where he played 4 overtimes without fouling. He went into the first overtime with 4 fouls. So what have you kind of seen from this early season to be encouraged, I guess, with this North Carolina team and where they could end up?
Yeah, I mean, it's the number one thing is it's still very early. This was a holiday tournament, so they still have some big time games that they'll be able to play in and be able to prove that, hey, we are the real deal. I think this does help humble you a little bit more and make you kind of, okay, we know we got to do these things and play this hard and be this focused each and every game. Because at the end of the day, whether they're 1 or 18 or whatever, it's super cliche, but everybody's going to give North Carolina their best shot. Like that's in their mind, selfishly as an individual player. If I play really well against North Carolina, scouts and people like that are watching, right? And as a team, if I play really well and beat a North Carolina team, that goes on to my resume for the NCAA tournament and going on forward. And it's nothing but good. So I think they have to realize that. And two, I think, like you said, they've played hard. In that Alabama game, for each team to only score 101 to 103 in 60 minutes of play, there's a lot of defense and a lot of competing going on. And so, like you said, you got to hang your hats to Alabama for making 1 or 2 extra plays better than them. But they fought, and so if you can take that and you can go back and clean up some of the little details that maybe got you to that point where you had to go to overtime, and keep on working on yourself and keep on staying engaged and play for each other and be there for each other, then I think they'll be just fine.
You beat North Carolina. It's going to be the first highlight played when you get drafted.
100%.
And,
100%.
and this team, they're going through the struggles right now. They're battling 4 overtimes or just the holiday tournaments in general where you're on the road for a week with your team. From your time in Chapel Hill, how did those shared experiences bring your team closer together and help you guys reach some of the goals that you had?
Yeah, I mean, going to the Bahamas, going to Maui, doing some of those tournaments, those were some of the best times. You watch, some of the end of the season videos and things like that. And you just remember all of the good times that you had during that time. And most of it's off the court. Obviously when you get to play in a tournament like this, you get a bunch of gear, a bunch of shoes, all that kind of stuff, basketball wise. But to be able to be with each other on Thanksgiving in Portland, Oregon, those are things that right now it kind of sucks because you lose a couple games, but those are memories that you're going to remember for a while. So, that's another thing is hold on to the times that y'all are together. Hold on to, the good times that you have off the court because that only helps you on the court. So hopefully they, enjoyed as much as they could this situation and they can kind of move on from it.
Yeah, one thing from my time playing football at Carolina, your time probably playing basketball at Carolina, that like when you're winning, everybody's telling you you're great. But when you're losing, you start to realize like the only people I really have in my corner are the guys in this locker room and my family. And I think those are kind of the experiences that really bring a team together. But the last thing you want as a team that's reeling is a trip to Assembly Hall, Carolina, back on the road at number 10 Indiana on Wednesday. And then Sunday, they're at Virginia Tech. We will be back next week to break it down. Appreciate everybody watching or listening. And Justin, appreciate the time as always.
Always appreciate you, man.